जय गोपी जन वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदनन्दना जय प्रजनरञ्जना जय यशोदनन्दना जय प्रजनरञ्जना जय यमुनतीरवनचारी जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय यमुनतीरवनचारी जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदनन्दना जय प्रजनरञ्जना जय यमुनतीरवनचारी जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय यमुनतीरवनचारी जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय यमुनतीरवनचारी जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhav ki, Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Srila Gurudeva ki, Nitai Gaura Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Jai Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki. So we welcome all devotees today to read and study from Srimad Bhagavatam. We are looking at the third canto, 8th chapter, 26 verse. 3:8:26. Pumsam swakamaya vivikta margai abhyarchatam kamadugan gripadmam pradarshayantam kripaya nakendu mayukka binnanguli charupatram. Pumsam swakamaya vivikta margai abhyarchatam kamadugangri papmam pradarshayantam kripaya nakendu मयूखभिन्नाङ्गुलिचारुपत्रम् पुंसां स्वकामाय विविक्तमार्गै अभ्यर्चतां कामदुगाङ्घ्रिपद्मम् प्रदर्शयन्तं कृपया न केन्दु मयूखभिन्नाङ्गुलिचारुपत्रम् Pumsam of the human being, swakamaya, according to the desire, vivikta margai, by the path of devotional service, abhyarchatam, worshipped, kama duga angri padmam, the lotus feet of the Lord, which can award all desired fruits, pradarshayantam, while showing them, kripaya, by causeless mercy, naka, nails, indu, moonlight, mayuka, rays, binna, divided, anguli, figures, charu patram, very beautiful. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The Lord showed His lotus feet by raising them. His lotus feet are the source of all awards achieved by devotional service, free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship Him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from His moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. I'll just read it again. The Lord showed His lotus feet by raising them. His lotus feet are the source of all awards achieved by devotional service, free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship Him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from His moon-like toenails and fingernails appeared like the petals of a flower. Please hear the purport. The Lord fulfills the desires of everyone just as one desires. Pure devotees are interested in achieving the transcendental service of the Lord, which is non-different from Him. Therefore, the Lord is the only desire of the pure devotees, and devotional service is the only spotless process for achieving His favor. Srila Rupa Goswami says in his Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1.1.11 that pure devotional service is jnana karmadi anavritam. Pure devotional service is without any tinge of speculative knowledge and fruitive activities. Such devotional service is able to award the pure devotee of the highest result, namely direct association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. According to the Gopala Tapani Upanishad, the Lord showed one of the many thousands of petals of His lotus feet. It is said, Brahmano asav anavaratam me dhyayata dhyataha stutaha praradhante so abuddhayata gopavesho me purashtat avirva bhuva. After penetrating for millions of years, Lord Brahma could understand the transcendental form of the Lord as Sri Krishna in the dress of a cowherd boy, and thus he recorded his experience in the Brahma Samhita in the famous prayer, Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Tvishe Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patittanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Barhapidam Natavaravapu Karnayo Karnikaram Bibradvasaha Kanika Kapisham Vaijayantim Chamala Randran Venur Adhara Sudaya Purayan Gopa Vrinde Vrindaranyam Swapadaramanam Pravishad Gita Kirti. In the 10th canto, this description of Krishna is so nicely given. Why we chant this verse is because from the purport and from the whole context of this chapter, where Brahma actually had darshan of Krishna in his beautiful form as Lord Vishnu, we can understand how wonderful must be the form of the Lord. This is a very important point actually. We can see in the purport also that Prabhupada actually gives us the vision of the Acharya. And that vision is the fact that Brahma was given the chance to see one of the 1,000 petals on the lotus feet of Krishna. And because he meditated so much on the Lord, even though his first darshan of the Lord was as Garbhodakasai Vishnu, but because of his internal vision of Krishna, he was allowed by Srila Prabhupada's purport to actually take the vision of the Lord in the form of the cowherd boy in Vrindavan. And that's why this is one of the great verses. The Barhapidam verse is one of the great verses, two verses that Shukadev Goswami heard from his father Vyasadeva. And after hearing this verse, his heart melted from the point of impersonal realization to the taste of Bhakti Yoga, which is personal realization of the Lord in his feature of Bhagavan. So there are two verses. One is the Aho Bhakiyam, which spoke about the mercy of Krishna, and then the description of Krishna in this particular verse in 10:21:5. So these two verses should be remembered because they purify our hearts the moment we try to remember Krishna in this form. So Brahma was so fortunate that even though the initial form of Krishna was in the form of Garbhodakasai Vishnu, because of his earnestness of rendering devotional service, he was able to be given the insight into seeing Krishna in his beautiful form as the cowherd boy. And that's why in this shloka, Shukadev Goswami is remembering Krishna. He says that Krishna has nice peacock feather as an ornament on his head. He has blue karnikar flowers on his ear. He has a wonderful silken yellow garment, which is as brilliant as gold, and that is what is on his body. And he has this most unique Vaijayanti garland, which is not used as a garland for anyone in this world except for Krishna. And he exhibited in his pastime as a cowherd boy the transcendental form also as the greatest of the dances. And when he entered the forest of Vrindavan, he beautified that forest with the mark of his footprints. So Vrindavan is not beautiful because of Vrindavan itself. Vrindavan is beautiful because Krishna touched Vrindavan. Therefore, Vrindavan consciousness does not mean that we are in Vrindavan. Vrindavan consciousness means how much we are remembering Krishna. Even though Brahma was in the darkness of the creation and there was no being born before him and he was all alone, because of his meditation of the Lord, even though the first darshan was Garbhodakasai Vishnu, because of the purity of his prayer to Krishna, Krishna gave him a glimpse into the world of Vrindavan. So this shows that even though Brahma was not in Vrindavan geographically, still because his consciousness was Vrindavan consciousness, he was able to see the beautiful form of Krishna as the cowherd boy. That's why Srila Prabhupada emphasized so many times to us that this is about Krishna consciousness. It doesn't matter geographically where we are, but how important it is the level of our consciousness. But having said that, Srila Prabhupada created a society, and a society gives us the chance to remember Krishna in a better atmosphere. That's why we are together in this Sadhu Sangha. So the description of this verse ends, by saying that Krishna filled the holes of his flute very beautifully with the nectar of his lips. So this is the beautiful form of Krishna. And this is how Brahma was given the chance to actually see him. We understand here that Brahma took darshan of this amazing transcendental form of the Lord, and this darshan of the Lord is not something to be easily taken. We must understand from the pages of Bhagavatam that we must be qualified to take darshan of Krishna. This is a very important point. Until we become qualified to take darshan of Krishna, it is not possible for us to see Krishna actually. And this point was given very nicely actually in the pages of Bhagavatam in the episode of Narada. If you remember, when Narada was a small boy and his mother had been bitten by a serpent, and by the force of time he was separated from his mother. Because of his great association of the Bhakti Vedantas before, his mind was peaceful and he was able to concentrate on Krishna even as he left his house. He went into the forest and there intensely he tried to remember Krishna. So this is a very important point we have to remember. And what is that? The point is that to qualify ourselves to take darshan of Krishna is very important. It is not that we can think that we can just simply come today to take darshan of Jagannath. We have to qualify ourselves to take darshan of Jagannath. Many people can take darshan of the Lord. Many people can see the Lord. But to take darshan of Him is very different. That's why there are two different words in Bhagavatam that's used. Pashyati means to see. But darshan means to qualify oneself to actually take darshan of the Lord. So in other words, darshan means to take audience of the Lord. Pashyati means to see the Lord. Thousands of people can see Krishna. Duryodhana saw Krishna every day, isn't it? Practically every day when Krishna was in Hastinapur, the Kauravas were seeing Krishna. But they were not taking darshan of Krishna. The Pandavas were seeing Krishna, but they were seeing Krishna with eyes anointed with love. They were qualifying themselves to see Krishna by their behavior. So by behavior, we come to take darshan of Krishna. And that behavior must be founded, Prabhupada says in this purport, on the strength of the process of devotional service. This is very important. That's why in the first canto, 6th chapter, you find at that time, Narada was a young boy, but he remembered the Bhakti Vedantas. What did they do? They tried to meditate on Krishna, isn't it? They were always speaking about Krishna. So what did he do? Yesterday, if you remember, Padmalochan Prabhu was telling us about Ashtanga Yoga and how dhyayataha, the word dhyana, it comes from intense meditation. So any form of exercise of remembering Krishna becomes actually devotional in nature. This is very important. The common denominator for all our activities must be immersed in devotional service. So in the first canto, 6th chapter, in the 16th verse, Brahma gives us this insight, Narada gives us the insight into how we qualify ourselves in the way Brahma qualified himself to take darshan of the Lord. Dhyayathas charanambujam bhava nirjita chetasa outkantashu kalakshasya riddhi asinme shanai harihi. If you look at the translation, it's very nice. Dhyayataha means to meditate on Krishna. And how did he meditate on Krishna? Charana ambujam. In other words, in the same way that the Lord showed the lotus feet to Brahma, because Brahma was meditating on the form of the Lord and his lotus feet, in that same way, he was actually able to, in the same way Narada was able to remember Krishna. This is very important. As I'm speaking, I'm hearing a lot of echo, Prabhu. And the echo seems to be coming from this I don't know, it's the phone actually. Is there a reason why? But is it affecting the recording of how people hear? Because it's definitely affecting the audience here. Just 1 minute. No, I'm not hearing it. Huh? Okay. Did you do something wrong? Okay, okay. So now I can speak? Okay, fine. So in 1:16, Narada says, as soon as I begin to meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna, this is very important. As soon as we begin to concentrate or meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna with his mind, what happened to him? Because he began to meditate on Krishna, the mind, which is normally very difficult to control, it actually became transformed in transcendental love. This is the power of chanting and meditating on Krishna's lotus feet. Very important. This whole verse actually is on the lotus feet of Krishna. And that is why whole Bhagavatam is full of the great advantage of remembering Krishna's lotus feet. We don't see Krishna's lotus face first. Bhagavatam tells us that we are not qualified to do so. But we have all the right, as servants of the Lord, to look at his lotus feet first. In fact, according to Vaishnava etiquette, when one enters into the temple, when one begins to see the form of the Lord, one should actually look at the lotus feet of the Lord first. And then one moves up to the lotus face of the Lord. That is how we are supposed to meditate. We should not immediately look at the face of the Lord because we are not qualified to do so. But the tendency is always that we think we are qualified, you see. So immediately we think, that I have the adhikar to do that. But these little things, Prabhu's Matajis, make the difference between pure devotional service and struggling devotional service. The symptom of pure devotional service is that in any situation, you are peaceful. You're not disturbed. So you yourself can test yourself. Like all these kids that we have, you can test yourself. Whether you want to admit to yourself is a different thing. But you can test yourself. You can ask. Narada did not even meditate on the face of the Lord. He meditated on the lotus feet of the Lord. And the moment he meditated on the lotus feet of the Lord, his mind became transformed. Otherwise, the mind is the source of chanchal. But in this case, his mind became transformed to transcendental love. Because Krishna reciprocated. And because Krishna reciprocated, he was in a state of bhava. He was actually able to have tears rolling down his eyes. And without delay, the personality of Godhead Krishna appeared on the lotus of his heart. How important this is. So we can see the benefit of meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord. Sometimes we don't have faith. How is it possible just by meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord, our mind can be transformed? How can we have love in our mind the moment we concentrate on the Lord? That's because we are trying to speculate. That's because we lack faith. But if we have faith and we start the process, then Krishna gives us the intelligence. Krishna gives us the bhakti on which we can remember him actually. So even though bhakti is in our heart, it needs to be obtained through the mercy of Krishna. And faith is the connecting point between bhakti being dormant in our heart and bhakti being activated by Krishna. That is what happened to Brahma. Long period of penance had instilled faith in Brahma. And therefore, when Brahma started meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord reciprocated with him. This is very important. But then, immediately after remembering Krishna and seeing the darshan of the Lord, not pashyati, but darshan of the Lord in the lotus feet, in the lotus of his heart, immediately the Lord's form vanished. And when he vanished in 1:621, Krishna then tells Narada a very important point of why we can become qualified or should become qualified to be able to take darshan of the lotus feet of the Lord. He says there, Hantasmin janmani bhavan, very important verse, ma mam drishyati iharati, avipakva kashayanam durdasho aham ku yoginam. Now, the word to word for Prabhupada's Bhagavatam is very important. And here, there are three things that will disqualify us from being able to take darshan of the lotus feet of the Lord. The first thing that you will see is this word that comes as avipakva. Avipakva means immature. When we perform devotional service in an immature manner, we disqualify ourselves to see Krishna. Immature means what? Immature means that we do not embrace the real goal of devotional service. That is immaturity. The goal of devotional service is to render loving transcendental service to Krishna without any motive which is material. The moment we don't embrace that, then our devotional service is considered like an unripened mango. It is considered immature. And therefore, the symptoms of the immaturity will be in the way we approach devotional service. Criticisms, fault finding, lack of faith, all these things come because the mango is not ripe. This is very important. The second point that disqualifies us from taking darshan of the Lord, which is so important actually, is kashayanam. Kashayanam means that there is a lot of material dirt in our hearts. That is an important point also. The moment we are not having Krishna and our motive is not to serve Krishna, but to serve our own desires, as Prabhupada writes in the purport, that desire to serve our own desires will allow material dirt to stay in our hearts. This is very important. And the moment we have material desires, then it is very difficult for the heart to receive Krishna. To the extent our heart is clear, to that extent we can take darshan of Krishna. That is very important. That's why the Pandavas could take clear darshan of Krishna. But the Kauravas could only see Krishna. They could not receive Krishna in their hearts because they were not favorable to him. This is a very important point. Kamsa remembered Krishna more than you and I can remember. We have so many more faults actually, but Kamsa had the great benediction. He always remembered Krishna. But despite that, Prabhupada keeps emphasizing that even with our faults, by remembering Krishna favorably, we are moving faster towards purity than the demonic nature of Kamsa, who was unfavorable to Krishna. This is very important. And being favorable to Krishna, Prabhus and Matajis, actually means being favorable to the devotees of the Lord. This is very important. How can you be favorable to the devotees of the Lord if you find fault with them? You will never be favorable to them because you will always be finding fault with them. This is a very important point. In whole Bhagavatam, you will never find a single devotee finding fault with another devotee. Nothing is there. In fact, Bhagavatam is free of all that. It is only when we are not connected to Bhagavatam, then all these things actually come. So this lens that we keep, that actually shows whether we are qualified or not. This is what we call kashayana, material dirt. And the third thing that disqualifies us from remembering Krishna is this last word in the word to word, kuyoginam. Kuyoginam means those who are incomplete in service. Incomplete in service means actually that when we take up a service for the Lord, we should complete it. It's as simple as that. Take it up means do it very nicely. Do it to the best of our ability. Don't take up a service and just leave it. It just doesn't mean the service of doing garland or the service of coming to temple. No, it actually means the whole lifetime of service to Krishna. That we don't give up in our devotional service. This is a very important point. Then our service is incomplete. Of course, Krishna is very kind. If your service is incomplete, he gives you the favorable situation in the next life to actually come back and perform devotional service. But we should not aim that, next life I'll do a little bit, the life after we have to do a little bit. Not like that. We should pray that in this life itself, we should please Krishna so nicely that we are eternally engaged in his service. This is a very important point. So these are the things that disqualify us when we want to see Krishna. And therefore, by understanding that, you can come to know how great Brahma was, isn't it? Brahma had no material dirt in his heart. Brahma's service was complete because even though he tried first on his own to dive into the lotus stem of the flower, when he found he could not understand the origins, he sat down and he wanted with faith to receive the higher knowledge. And he meditated and completed his service. And that is why Krishna appeared before him. This is a very important point for us to do actually. Now, having understood that, Brahma was so blessed and privileged. Prabhupada translates, and Prabhupada writes in the purport and translates that how did Krishna show his lotus feet to Brahma? He showed it by raising them. See how factual and descriptive and detailed Bhagavatam is, isn't it? We can just say that Brahma saw Krishna's lotus feet. But that would mean that he saw the top part of Krishna's lotus feet. But if Krishna raised his lotus feet, what did he see? He saw the actual bottom of his lotus feet. Isn't that amazing? Every time we take darshan of the Lord in deity form, you realize one thing. You'll only see the top of his feet. You will never see the bottom of his feet. So how fortunate was Brahma? Krishna gave such a detail, was so kind to him that he raised his feet. And when he raised his feet, he could actually see it from the bottom, actually. This is the amazing thing of Brahma's devotion. So this is the beauty of Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is not an impersonal literature. It doesn't give you some description of God, That's why when Prabhupada was asked, who is God? Prabhupada said in Bhagavatam, the full description of God is given. Where he stays, who is with, how he looks, everything is given. We have information about everything about Krishna. And that's why his feet is considered very special. In the word-to-word of today's shloka, it is Kama Dugangri Padmam. Therefore, it is stated as the lotus feet of the Lord. And this lotus feet of the Lord does one thing. It awards everyone all their desired fruits. This is a very important point. It just doesn't award the pure devotee something. His lotus feet is non-discriminatory. Anyone who comes to his lotus feet, whatever be their desire, they will be awarded with their desired fruits. This is a very important point. But one thing we should note, in the purport of 6th canto, 16th chapter, 34th verse, when Chitraketu Maharaj had just taken darshan of the Lord, darshan again, there Prabhupada writes, something on desire which is very important and which is related to what we're talking about. Because the Lord's lotus feet can fulfill the desire of anyone. But Prabhupada writes in that purport that a living entity cannot exist without desires. And it's somewhere in between. But I'm just telling you, a living entity cannot exist without desires. So one thing we should accept, don't beat yourself up over it. Desires are always going to be there. As long as we have a mind and the mind is working, even if the mind is mental, right, there will always be desires. Maybe your desires are mental, but there will be desires. So we cannot stop desires. It's not astonishing that we have desires. But Prabhupada writes in that purport, desires that can never be fulfilled are called karma. Very important. We always think of karma as lust. But now we get a real understanding of what karma is. Karma means a desire that can never be fulfilled. You take this back and think about it carefully. What is it in your life that you desire for that can never be fulfilled? Ask yourself the question. You will realize after a while that the thing that can never be fulfilled in this world is that desire which is material. You know why it cannot be fulfilled? Not that you will not get it. You will get it, but it will not satisfy you. That is the meaning of fulfillment. So you can get material desires fulfilled, meaning you will get them, it will be given to you, but you will not be fulfilled by it. That is the meaning of what Prabhupada is saying. Desires that can never be fulfilled are karma, and they are known as lusty desires. They are known as material desires. And Prabhupada writes there, when we are possessed, someone is possessed by a demon. When we are possessed by material desires, then what happens to us? We are deprived of intelligence. That is why sometimes you'll find that someone may be very intelligent materially, but why they can't take up devotional service? Because material desires are very strong in their hearts. So therefore, they are not intelligent enough to understand that while material desires can be fulfilled in what they think is fulfillment, actually they cannot be fulfilled. That's why we keep moving from one material desire to another. That's why today we eat the sweet and we think we're very happy. But by tomorrow we are not satisfied, we want something else. Isn't it? That's what happens. And very often we are not satisfied with each other also. I'm not satisfied with my wife, I'm not satisfied with the husband, I'm not satisfied with this, with that. And we are deprived of intelligence. So, Krishna's lotus feet can fulfill our desires. It is written in the purport here. that the Lord fulfills the desire of everyone just as one desires. What does that mean? It means He gives you what you want, but whether you are satisfied with it is a different story. That is the point here. The Bhagavatam will show us that the demons got everything. All the demons got more opulence than you and I combined will ever get for millions of lifetimes. But were they satisfied with that? Was Ravana satisfied with Mandodari? Was Kamsa satisfied that he had already jailed his father Ugrasena? No. Was he satisfied that the prophecy had said the eighth child will die, I will kill him? But even then, for a while, he appeared as if he would just let the first child go. But immediately he changed his mind and he killed the first child. This is how we think we are being fulfilled. But if you run for something which is material, you'll always have this lack of satisfaction in the heart. This is a very important point that Bhagavatam tells us. So that's why this 6:16:34 gives us the true understanding of the word fulfill. That is why when Krishna gives everyone the benediction that we want, it doesn't mean that after getting it, we are very happy. Dhruva Maharaj is a good example. So much of his push towards remembering Krishna was driven by a material desire. Again, as Padmalochan Prabhu pointed out yesterday, isn't it? He was driven by a desire to actually become greater than his father. But by the time he was finished with his devotional service, the devotional service freed him of the contamination of the material desire. So that by the time he took darshan of the Lord, what started off as a journey for material desire had transformed into love of God. That is why we don't have to artificially try to change our material desires. By performing devotional service to Krishna, our material desires, though sometimes becoming troublesome, have faith that they will be transformed. It may take time, Prabhus and Matajis. Brahma, after all, took so long. Why are we thinking that in 1 year we can change this? Of course, you may say, we don't have much time as Brahma. But then again, we can counter that by saying we are nowhere as qualified as Brahma also. So actually, we need more time. We need more time. But that is where we must maintain our patience. Krishna's lotus feet is so powerful, Bhagavatam says, they can fulfill the desire of anyone because he is Ishwaraha Sarva Bhutanam. This is very important. Krishna can fulfill the desire of everyone, not you or me. Why? Because he is the one who's situated in our hearts. This is a very important point. He is the person situated in our hearts. And when he is situated in our hearts, as Ishwaraha Sarva Bhutanam, Riddeshe Arjuna Tishtati. He's in the heart of everyone. And what does he do when he's in the heart of the devotee? Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani Yantra Arudhani Mayayam. This is in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, I think 61 or 62. So you must remember one thing. We all must remember one thing. Nobody can fulfill your desires. Even if your desire is a material desire, only Krishna can fulfill it. Please remember this. No husband, no wife can fulfill the desire of their counterparts. No father or mother can fulfill the desire of their children. No state can fulfill the desire of its citizens. We are under the mistaken notion that people can fulfill our desires. That is why we depend on others unnecessarily. That's why we get into relationships which are of no value actually. Because ultimately we think, if I'm with you, you can fulfill something I want. But that's why Bhagavatam tells us, even for the fulfillment of a material desire, Krishna only can allow that. Because he is Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani. He is Brahmayan. He is the one directing us. Without a director, the drama cannot happen, isn't it? Without a director, a movie cannot be shot. We are all actors, but without the director, we cannot go anywhere. This is a very important point. You may have a nice car, but if the car is not in working condition, you can sit in the car as a driver, but you're not going anywhere. You're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to sit there and look like you're driving, but you're not going anywhere. Remember when we were young, we used to sit in these cars. Parents would put in some money and the car would move up and down, right? But where was it going? It was going nowhere. It was just in the shopping center. But we were thinking we are going somewhere actually. That is our life. Even in material desires, we need Krishna. Please remember this. The moment we remember this, then we will become very, very much connected to Krishna. Otherwise, what will happen is material desires, we go to Devatas. Material desires we park somewhere else. That's why akama sarva kamo moksha kamo. That's why that verse, in Bhagavatam is there. That whether you have material desire, you have no desire, you have desire for liberation. What must you do? Tivrena bhakti yogena. With full force, you have to go to Krishna. You cannot go anywhere else except Krishna. This is the spiritual wisdom of Bhagavatam. This is why Bhagavatam is all-encompassing. This is why Bhagavatam is the most unique literature in the world, because a pure devotee can read Bhagavatam and attain prema, and a devotee who is full of material desire can read Bhagavatam and eventually attain prema also. There is no other scripture in the world that gives facility for both ends of the devotional spectrum. No, there is no scripture that does that. Only Bhagavatam can do that. And that's why Prabhupada gave us Bhagavatam. Because Prabhupada wanted us to move from the point of running after Krishna for material desire to the point where we run after Krishna only to please him. That means we are pure devotees. That is what he wanted. And once we understand that even for fulfillment of material desire we need Krishna, we will look at Krishna very differently now. We will not start depending on material things. We will learn to depend on Krishna. That is the start of our pure devotional service, to really depend on Krishna. And that's why in the next verse after that, Krishna tells Arjuna, Tam eva sharanam gaccha. Therefore we surrender to him. That is very important. We must surrender to one who is worthy of being surrendered to, isn't it? Sharanyam in Bhagavatam means one whom is worthy of being surrendered. If we surrender to someone, if I surrender to you and you surrender to me, we'll both end up in the ditch. If I were to hold the tail of a dog, as Bhagavatam says, to cross over the ocean, what will happen to me? The dog will just swim for maybe 50 meters. After that, dog will drown, you will also drown. That is the problem in this world. My Guru Maharaj used to say, the wife holds on to the dhoti of the husband holds on to the sari of the wife, and they both drown. That is what happens. Because we are both not holding the lotus feet of Krishna. We don't want to see the lotus feet of Krishna. The Kauravas saw Krishna, but they did not take darshan of his lotus feet. And what happened to them? They relied on their prowess, and they were vanquished. Arjuna did not rely on his prowess. He relied on the prowess of Krishna and his lotus feet. And therefore he was victorious. He was very victorious. So that's why surrender unto Krishna. Sarva bhavena bharata. And then tad prasadat param shantim stanam prapsyasi shashvatam. If we surrender unto him fully, then by his grace, we can attain transcendental peace. What is transcendental peace? Pure devotional service. Transcendental peace is a symptom of pure devotional service. How will we get it? If we surrender to him. That is how we will get it. This is what it means to be surrendered. That's why Brahma turned to the lotus feet of Krishna. And Krishna reciprocated by raising his lotus feet. How nice it is, actually. But then Prabhupada goes on in the purport here, after stating that magnificent first line, that actually Krishna fulfills the desires of everyone. Prabhupada spends a significant amount of the purport actually telling us another very important point. That actually Krishna's transcendental lotus feet is the domain and monopoly of the pure devotees. It is actually the pure devotees that really relish his lotus feet. And actually it is true if we look at all the Bhagavatam examples. The gopis are a good example. They did not want to come to Krishna for anything. In fact, when Krishna had a transcendental headache, so to speak, it's only the gopis who were prepared to go to hell so that Krishna would be very peaceful. This is pure devotional service. Look at Govinda, who was the personal servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Leela. Govinda had the opportunity to cross over Chaitanya Mahaprabhu after he massaged his lotus feet and the Lord had fallen asleep to go and have prasadam. But he did not. Yet he transgressed all etiquette by crossing over first, only because he could render transcendental service. If he had to die because of that, never mind, let him finish his service and then die. It is not that, oh, I have to save myself, I will go to hell. So never mind, Krishna, you have your transcendental headache and I will save myself from hell. Something is wrong there, isn't it? So therefore we can see that this is the mood of the devotees. Look at Sudama, for example. Sudama went to see Krishna under the pretext of asking him for something. But factually speaking, throughout his travel from Porbandar to Dwarka, he had nothing in his heart but humility before Krishna. What is that famous verse? Kwaham daridra papiyan, kwa Krishna sriniketanaha, brahma bandhuriti smaham, bahubhyam parirambitaha. This is a very nice verse actually. It's in the 10th canto. It's in the chapter when 1081, 16, maybe 1081. I know it's in 81st chapter. There, very nicely, as he's leaving, Sudama says this nice point. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? I'm just a sinful, poor friend of a Brahmana. That's all I am. I'm a friend of a Brahmana. Not even a Brahmana. I'm Brahma Bandhu. I'm not even a Brahmana actually. And then he asks the next question, and who is Krishna? Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in his Sad Aishwarya, full in his 6 opulences. Despite the fact of who he is and who am I, what has Krishna done? He has embraced me with his 2 arms. Can you imagine that? This is the mood of a pure devotee. A pure devotee never thinks he's qualified to see Krishna. And because he's seriously knowing that he is not qualified, not for the sake of saying I'm not qualified, he is the person who can see Krishna. Brahma realized on his own that he had no qualification to see Krishna. The moment he did that, he could actually take darshan of the Lord. See, this is the beauty of the pure devotees of Krishna. This is very important. I think if you remember Raghunath Das Goswami, the emblem of renunciation amongst the Goswamis, he only decided to renounce everything only for the satisfaction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he realized, for example, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not like that he was actually coming to the accompaniment of all the devotees but still having money in his pocket, he renounced that money. He had very nice shawl that his father left him, but when he heard Mahaprabhu did not like the shawl, he renounced it. He had so much of opulent prasadam, but when he realized that Mahaprabhu wanted him to eat simple, he would go to the end, to that gate of Jagannath Puri, and there he would wait for the spoiled food that came even after the cows had eaten the first round. And then he would take that. He did not do this because of mastery of the senses, because, he wanted to bring the life air up to his head. No, he did this because he heard Mahaprabhu doesn't like it. That's it. So when we hear that Srila Prabhupada wants something, we should do it. And because Prabhupada is the pure representative of Krishna, then Krishna becomes pleased. That is the way we come to purity of devotional service. Not that we have to do this breathing and that breathing. Why? Because if that satisfies Krishna, we'll do it. But if it does not, then why should we do it? This is a very important point. That is why Sudama, that is why the gopis, that is why all these great devotees are pure devotees. Because their intention was to only please Krishna. We must ask ourselves, if I perform an activity, does it please Krishna? Does it please my spiritual master? If it does, do it. If it doesn't, reject it. The moment we are on that platform, the lotus feet of the Lord is available for us. How? By the blessings of the acharyas and the blessings of Krishna. You remember the wives of the Brahmanas? When the Brahmanas refused to give bhoga, right, which was going to be offered anyway in the sacrifice, which was meant for Krishna and Balaram, what did the wives do? Behind their husbands, they took all the bhoga and they gave it to Krishna. Prabhupada writes in Krishna book, they risk their life, they risk their limb, they risk their reputations, they risk becoming rejected by their husbands. But because it pleased Krishna, they undertook all this just to do it for Krishna. So how much austerity Brahma did actually? So austerity means how much are we ready to sacrifice to please our spiritual masters and Krishna, not to please our mind. And that is why in the middle of the purport, Prabhupada talks about spotless devotional service by quoting Rupa Goswami. This very important verse from Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu is there, isn't it? Anya bilashita sunyam. What does it mean? It means without desire other than those for the service of Krishna. This is a very important point. What this word, Anya bilashita sunyam, what does it actually mean? Prabhupada translates this particular shloka in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So his translation is very important. In the word to word, Anya Bilashita Sunya means without desire other than those for the service of Krishna. So in other words, we must check ourselves. Is our desire really to serve Krishna, or is it to serve our name, our fame, our reputation, how people see us? Which one is it? When we are introspective that way, then Krishna will help us to purify ourselves. This is a very important question. Jnana karmadi anavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. That is the meaning of this important verse. So the translation is, first class devotional service develops. This translation is in Madhya Leela, 19th chapter, 167 verse. This is the gold standard translation. And this translation is very important because Prabhupada says there, when first class devotional service develops, then what happens? One must be devoid of all material desires. Now we know what it means, right? It means we channel our desires to please Krishna. Not that we run after desires that cannot be fulfilled. So the moment you become frustrated in some desire, Prabhu and Mataji's, then remember that desire that frustrates you is karma. It was not meant for the satisfaction of Krishna. It was actually meant for our satisfaction. That's why we are frustrated. So even if you're performing a service and you find yourself becoming frustrated, you must question the motive behind your service. That is how we grow in devotional service. Don't blame the person who's doing service with you, please. Don't. Oh, because of this I became dissatisfied. No. Ask yourself why I'm dissatisfied. Because I appear externally to be performing the service, but internally, am I doing it to please Krishna? Or is there some other motive behind it? Is it a showcase for what I want to do? That's very important. Remember, Padmalochan Prabhu said that we may sing very nicely, but why are we singing? Are we singing because we want to please Krishna? Or we're singing because after that, Prabhu, you sing very nicely. That's what we want. Then what will happen is, we will never feel satisfied. We'll come, we'll go, but we'll never feel satisfied. What's the point? This is a very important point, actually. So when first-class devotional service develops, one must become devoid of all material desires. And one knowledge which is obtained by monistic philosophy, fruitive actions, we must become free of this. And that's why Prabhu was speaking about this very important yoga ladder. As devotees, we are privileged by Srila Prabhupada's mercy that we have a chance to take a lift instead of taking the ladder. Really, we can just take a lift actually. Bhakti is so powerful that it can make us actually automatically, without separate endeavor, take all the benefits of everything else that would normally come through difficulty. This is so important actually. Just think, Srila Prabhupada slogged so much to give us Bhagavatam. How much effort does it take for us to open Bhagavatam? Hardly any ounce of effort. And even then to open Bhagavatam is difficult for us. That means we are really finished, isn't it? That's why my Guru Maharaj said, if you cannot open Bhagavatam and study it, you go to the nearest river, you tie a string around your feet, then take a big stone and you throw the stone which is tied to the string into the river and just go into the river. Because what is the point? Prabhupada sweat blood, he sweat sweat, he sweat so much for us, and we cannot even open Bhagavatam. We can't even do any service for Krishna without putting ourselves in it. What is it in? What is there for me? What is my gain? What is my gain? The pure devotees of the Lord only thought, what is Krishna's gain? That's all they wanted. So the devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably. And what's the last line as Prabhupada translates? As Krishna desires. Not as you and I desire, but as Krishna desires. How will we know what is Krishna's desire? We understand it through Srila Prabhupada. We understand it through our spiritual masters. Each of our spiritual masters are gifted with purity because of their service to Srila Prabhupada. So whatever instructions they give you, that becomes your life and your soul. Just follow it. That's all we have to do. So the secret of doing what has been stated in this 1.1.11 is given again by that shloka that Padmalochan Prabhu brought up yesterday. Remember the shloka of 6.1.15, Kechit Kevalaya Bhaktya? Very important verse. Vasudeva Parayanaha Agam Dunvanti Katsyena Niharam Iva Bhaskaraha. The secret of pure devotional service is given in the two lines of Vasudeva Parayanaha. Look at the word to word. Vasudeva means to who should we perform devotional service? What is the element of Sharanyam? Sharanyam means Vasudeva. That is the source of what we take shelter of. Then how do we perform it? This is very important. We must perform our service in such a way that we are completely attached only to the service. We are not attached to the we are not dependent on austerity. We're not dependent on penance. We're not dependent on acquisition of knowledge. Neither are we dependent on pious activity. These are not things that we want to take out from the service. We just become attached to our service. But attached to service doesn't mean this is my service, you can't take my service. Many times the greatest fights in devotional service is fight over service actually. This is my service, I've been doing it 15 years, how can you do it? But being attached to service means we are being attached to what pleases Krishna. That's what it means. And Krishna always wants us to work together in services. Krishna doesn't like solo people, He always likes devotees working together. Even in the spiritual world, you have to work together. You don't get this right in the material world, then you have to wait for a long time before you can go to spiritual life. So if we don't know how to work with each other, then we got major problems in devotional service. I can tell you that. But if we learn how to put aside our egos and we learn to work with each other, then we are attached to the service of Krishna. So that is the way service must be understood. This is a very important point actually. That's why in Bhagavatam, Krishna declares to Uddhava very, very, without any doubt, in 11, 14, 20 of Srimad Bhagavatam. My Guru Maharaj liked this verse very much. Towards the last 2 years of his life, in the 11th canto, this is one of the few verses that he kept studying. Krishna tells Uddhava, because time is running for Krishna also. He is about to leave, at that time. So he's speaking to Uddhava. So all the points he brings to Uddhava that becomes Uddhava Gita becomes very essential for us. Krishna says there, Na sadayati mam yogo, na sankyam dharma uddhava, na swadhyayas tapas tyago, yatha bhaktir mamorjita. And the translation is very nice. My dear Uddhava, the unalloyed devotees render to me, the unalloyed devotional service which is rendered to me by my devotees, what happens when they perform this devotional service? They bring me under their control. This is how powerful devotional service is. Those who worship the lotus feet of Krishna, what happens to them? They actually bring Krishna under their control. Only because they do not want to control Krishna. But those who want to control Krishna, they can never bring Krishna under their control. They just can't. It's not possible for them. And that's why Uddhava is told by Krishna, those who perform this pure devotional service, they will bring me under their control. But I cannot be controlled in any other manner. That's why he says, Na sadayati. I cannot be controlled by mystic yoga. I cannot be controlled by those who are renounced. I cannot be controlled by someone speaking on Sankhya philosophy. I cannot be controlled by pious work. I cannot be controlled by Vedic studies. And I cannot be controlled by austerity. So Brahma's austerity pleased Krishna, but his devotion caught Krishna. This is very important. His austerity pleased Krishna, but his devotion actually caught Krishna. So which now brings us to that very important point. What is the value of such devotional service? That is very important. This value of devotional service, Prabhupada writes in the purport, why is it that pure devotees run after Krishna in this pure devotional manner? Because they get direct association of the Lord. Direct association of the Lord doesn't mean there is no transparent via medium. It means that there is nothing else in our life except Krishna. That is the meaning of direct association. Direct association doesn't mean once I have reached the end of the yoga ladder, I can throw away all the devotees. It's just me and the Lord. No. You'll find actually when we come to the culmination of devotional service, we are bending lower and we are serving more. That is the culmination of devotional service. And that is why, to end this time today that we have spent, we should remember this wonderful verse that encapsulates all the points of devotional service. It is found famously in 11.5.33 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Dhyeyam sada paribhavagnam abhishtadoham tirthaspadam siva virinchi nutam sharanyam Brityatiham pranatapala bhavadipotam Vande Mahapurushate Charanaravindam. By looking at this shloka, right, we can understand exactly why Brahma meditated on the lotus feet of Krishna. He meditated on his lotus feet of Krishna because that lotus feet is the only eternal object of meditation. It will never go. Everything else is temporary. We hold on to any other feet, we are in trouble. But if we hold on to Krishna's feet, that Sharanyam is correct, so Sharanam, surrender, is perfect. This lotus feet destroys all the embarrassing conditions of material life. What is the embarrassing conditions of material life? That every time we are slapped by Maya, but again we want more slaps. Isn't that embarrassing? Someone slaps you already because you made a mistake. What you do is you give your other cheek and say, slap me again. That is very embarrassing. So we keep coming back to this world because of material desires. But if you worship the lotus feet of Krishna, then that material desires, embarrassing conditions of life, Krishna will wash out from our hearts. The third thing that the lotus feet gives us is that it freely awards the greatest function or desire of the soul. What is the desire of all of us actually in our hearts? It's actually attainment of love of Godhead. And Krishna will give us that award if we worship his lotus feet. His lotus feet is Tirthaspadam. It is the shelter of all the holy places and all the holy persons. Even the shelter of Brahma, even the shelter of Lord Shiva. And the last point is very nice. Brityati. It means Krishna is so kind, even for those who are not pure in devotional service. If they simply even bow to Krishna with some respect, if they bow to the lotus feet of Krishna with some respect, that lotus feet will liberate that person from this material condition. And therefore, it is the conclusion of the Sastras and this verse and Brahmaji, when he finally ends his penance and starts his prayers in the 9th chapter, that the lotus feet of Krishna are the only suitable boat for crossing this ocean of birth and death. And that is why in Ramayana, you remember the boatman, the Kevat? When the boatman saw Ram, Sita and Lakshman wanting to cross over that river, the boatman had one desire. And his desire was to wash the lotus feet of Lord Ram. Not to see his face or wash his hands, but his feet. And Lord Ram agreed, to the consternation of both Lakshman and Sita, because they never got to wash both his feet anytime. Because they were transcendently in competition, Lord Ram had divided service for them. So right feet Lakshman, left feet Sita, left feet Sita, right feet Lakshman. So they were both a bit perturbed. Lakshman was thinking so long, before Sita Mata came, I had both his feet. Sita Mata was thinking, if Lakshman was not around, I will have both his feet. But as it was, Lord Ram was so kind, they could take each one feet actually. And so when they saw that Lord Ram had allowed the Kevat to wash both his feet, they were thinking why this Kevat was given this chance. And Lord Ram explains that this Kevat was a little tortoise. And when Garbhodakasai Vishnu was lying down on the ocean of milk, the tortoise who was swimming in the ocean of milk, he had a desire to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. Just a desire. And so he came up onto Anantasesh and moved, tortoise is a bit slow, isn't it? So he moved, not express service, just very slow service. He moved towards the lotus feet of the Lord. Lakshmi Devi saw and decided, no, you can't. So she moved him away. And Anantasesh also helped by pushing him off, because Anantasesh is the bed, isn't it? So Sita Mata, Lakshmi Devi, Anantadev is Lakshman. And that's why they could only get 1 feet each. But this tortoise had such a pure desire. It was a very simple and very pure desire. That's why purity is simplicity. When we are simple in our desire, we don't have any motive. He had no motive to become big tortoise, king of the tortoise, nothing. He didn't desire to become Lakshmi Devi or Anantadev. He just desired to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. And therefore, Krishna never forgets. And therefore, as Ram, he did not forget this Kevat's desire. He fulfilled it. So what makes us think that if we don't hold on and take darshan of the lotus feet of the Lord, why will he not fulfill our desire to serve him? He will. As it is, all material desires he has fulfilled. But in any case, where has the material desires brought us? It has brought us no form of happiness. Why don't we now desire to serve Krishna? That's all. Serve the greatest person. Serve Krishna. And because of that, the Kevat was given a chance to wash his lotus feet. And so when he got on the board, Lord Ram in great humility told the Kevat, I have no money to give you to cross. And the Kevat said that between fellow professionals, we don't need to exchange money. And Lord Ram was thinking, I'm not a boatman. How can you say that we are of the same occupation? And Lord Ram was very pleasantly surprised when the Kevat said, we are of the same profession. But my only prayer is that when my time comes to leave this world, you please become the suitable boat, Pranata Polam. You become the suitable boat for allowing me to cross over this ocean of birth and death. This is a very important point that we must remember. So in conclusion, I want to share with you what Srila Prabhupada said about purity. Because this whole chapter, and this whole shloka is really about purity. And sometimes we mix up purity with perfection, especially material perfection. We think when we perform something, it is actually materially perfect and therefore it is pure. But they are two different concepts. In one conversation with a priest from the Vatican, Prabhupada had a conversation with him. The priest actually brought up this one point. The priest says, and I'm quoting, you see, I don't think that spiritual activities, right, which are external, that means when we perform spiritual activities, they're external, right? I don't think it can change the internal man, the priest is saying. Srila Prabhupada says, yes, one changes internally and externally. And you can actually see, Prabhupada says, my disciples have changed. Prabhupada is looking at his disciples, they have changed. Then the priest says, but a person can go to church every Sunday and say he's pure, and now Prabhupada stops it. Because that's our version of purity. Now Prabhupada corrects that version of purity. Prabhupada says, no, our program is not like that. Once in 7 days. We are engaged 24 hours a day in Krishna's service. Suppose you are washing the floor of the temple. It is not only external, because you are also thinking of Krishna, you are in Krishna consciousness. One may be washing the floor, but he is in pure Krishna consciousness. See? If your full consciousness is only of God, then you will always remain godly. There's no doubt about it. If you make a division, so much for worldly things and so much for God, then you will remain impure. But if you dovetail everything towards the service of the Lord, then everything you do is godly. Isn't that amazing? So simple. Huh? Now, last 2 points. Just give me 2 minutes more. In a Los Angeles lecture, in November 25th, 1968, Srila Prabhupada gives beautiful point on purity. We may not be 10% perfect, but as far as possible, if we follow the instruction as it is, that much is perfect. In this way, one will get perfection. So one has to follow. The same example, he's saying, try to understand. There is a perfect expert technologist or technician or mechanic. He's working. And somebody is working under his instruction. So this somebody, because he's strictly working under the instruction of the expert, he is also expert. He may not be 10% expert, but his work is expert. Is that clear? Prabhupada is saying. Because he is working under expert. So do you follow? So if you follow pure devotee, then you are also pure devotee. It may not be that one is 10% pure. But because we are trying to raise ourselves from conditional life, if we strictly follow the pure devotees, we are also pure devotee. How nice this point is. So pure doesn't mean the pure devotee walks perfectly, dhoti is perfect, tilak is perfect, how he takes up something is perfect. No. Purity is in following the instructions of the Acharya. And one last point, a letter to Tushra Krishna. Such a humorous letter Prabhupada writes. Because Tushra Krishna is asking this question. Your next question, After leaving this material realm, does the devotee remain forever with his spiritual master? Important question, right? Prabhupada says the answer is yes. But I think you have mistaken idea in this connection. Okay? You speak of pure devotee, that we should obey him only. These things are wrong idea. Very important, huh? Because what will happen is we'll obey our spiritual master and we'll act rascal to all other devotees. I'm very good disciple to my spiritual master, but to you, Prabhu, I don't care. That is Kanishta Adhikari. So Prabhupada says, if anyone thinks like that, that a pure devotee should be obeyed and no one else, that means he's a nonsense. We advise everyone to address one another as Prabhu. Prabhu means master. So how the master should be disobeyed? Others, they are also pure devotees. All of my disciples are pure devotees. Anyone sincerely serving the spiritual master is a pure devotee. It may be Siddha Swarupa. At that time, Siddha Swarupa was very big guru and disciple in Hawaii. Eventually, he would leave, but he was very powerful. But Prabhupada was saying, it's not just Siddha Swarup that you must serve. It is not only Siddha Swarupa is a pure devotee and not others. Do not try to make affection. See, Prabhupada is saying that. Siddha Swarup is a good soul, but others should not be misled. Anyone who is surrendered to the spiritual master is a pure devotee. Amongst ourselves, one should respect others as Prabhu, master, one another. As soon as we distinguish, here is a pure devotee, here is a non-pure devotee, that means I am nonsense. And how Prabhupada ends is nice. Why you want to be only in the spiritual sky with Siddha Swarup? Why not all others? If Siddha Swarup can go, why not everyone? Siddha Swarupa will go, you will go, Sham Sundar will go, all others will go. We will have another ISKCON there, Prabhupada is saying. But then Prabhupada says, of course, Mr. Nair must stay. Mr. Nair was really giving hell, to stop the purchase of the land in Juhu. Prabhupada writes here, Mr. Nair can stay. And now Prabhupada ends, if somebody does not go, then I shall have to come back to take him there. One should remember this, and every one of my disciples should act in such a way that they may go with me and may not have to come back to take another birth. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki, Nitai Gaura Premanande. Thank you, Prabhus, Matajis, for your time being here. If there is a question, I can take it. Just one maybe. Yes, Leela Sundari. About fault finding, yes. Yeah, sorry. Yes. I can't hear you, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, sometimes if you are employers, supervisors, or if you have some concern about something, and we try to solve that, and we see somebody's fault, is it a bad thing? How do we know whether we are having this fault-finding mentality, or if our mentality is to really try to solve the problem?
Very nice point. The answer is very straightforward. If your duty is actually to assess someone and how they're doing, if you're a manager in a temple, right? If you're taking care of devotees, then you must be aware that certain devotees have strengths and weaknesses. They are not faults. But if they are useful for Krishna, then we fan them. But if we have a relationship with a devotee and we are in a managerial level, for example, or even as an employer, it becomes part of the scope of our service to tell someone that you have to actually do this better or you're not doing it correctly. But if you use that as a personal vendetta against someone, then what will happen is, the symptom of fault finding is that after you have told someone their fault, you will carry it with you. You will judge them and carry it with you. But the symptom of one who doesn't find fault is that they will say that this is not correct, we shouldn't do it. And in the next moment, they are talking to you as if there was no fault, and they truly love you and serve you. Then you know that there is nothing in their heart when they point something out to you. Our spiritual masters are like that. That's why even if they chastise us, Prabhupada chastised us, disciples and all, everybody loved it. Because they knew the next moment, Prabhupada would not hold it against them at all. So when you hold it against someone and hold it in your mind, 2 years ago, 6 months, 34 days ago, you said this to me. Now, that is fault finding. But if you know this about the person, but forget it. You are a devotee, I'm still serving you. I have so many faults I can't see. Then that is not fault finding. We cannot be naive. We must recognize that there are certain things about a person that we should be careful of, we should avoid, but we don't hold it against them. Is that helpful? Okay, so it's very straightforward actually. I remember my Guru Maharaj, he would fire us like anything. Next moment he would ask, have you had prasadam? Or I remember we waited for a check in the ICICI bank, which was supposed to come. And somehow the thing went to Ahmedabad. Maharaj came to the bank manager, sat down there and said, I'm not going to move from the bank until the check comes from Ahmedabad to here, because it's needed for our temple. And he fired the manager. I was so scared, I wanted to leave. But when Maharaj saw me leaving, he said, where are you going? You sit here. So for 4 hours, Maharaj refused to move. He was chanting, reading Bhagavatam, in between firing the manager, reading Bhagavatam, firing the manager. After a while, right, when the check came, everything was done. Halfway through, suddenly when 12 o'clock came, and manager was sweating and sweating, Maharaj started asking him, so how many children you have? How old are you? How long you've been here? You take some prasadam, we'll bring something for you. Next moment, fire him. Why you're so incompetent? Why did you do this? Why you didn't do that? At the end of the day, right, when I turned to the manager, I said, I'm sorry. He said, nothing to be sorry. Your Guru Maharaj is sadhu. And this is the experience we have of all our spiritual masters. This is the way we become pure. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. Ananta Kodi Vaishnavrinda ki.